And you may be seated. Chag Sameach again, everyone. And it's nice to have all of you here on this second day of Shavuot. I heard about this wealthy elderly man. And this wealthy elderly man had a serious hearing problem for years and years. He could hardly hear anything. And one day he went to the doctor and he was fitted with a new type of hearing aid to where he could hear 100%. A month later, he went back for a checkup, and the doctor said, "Your family must be really happy. Your hearing is perfect." He said, "No, I haven't told my family. I just sit around and listen to the conversations. I've now changed my will 3 times. Reminds me of the old Yiddish curse, may be very wealthy and the only one in your family that is wealthy. Yes, sometimes there is the good and sometimes the bad. And I'll get back to this idea in just a moment. But first, let's talk about Yisker itself. Interestingly enough, the history of Yisker is not very clear. Originally, it was associated with Yom Kippur, and only later was it added to the 3 pilgrimage holidays, the festivals, Passover, Shivuot, and Sukkot. In the beginning, memorial prayers were recited for the martyrs of our people on Yom Kippur. Then we started reciting prayers for our own individual loved ones. In the Code of Jewish Law, the Shulchan Aruch, we're merely told it was a custom to contribute charity on Yom Kippur on the behalf of the departed. The Ramah, quoting a 13th century halakhic authority, adds the comment, "And we make mention of the names of the departed souls, since they also obtain forgiveness on Yom Kippur." So why do we recite Yisker on Yom Kippur? Well, here the express reason is because in reciting their names and by reciting Yisker, we gain atonement for our loved ones. Our doing good in this world reflects well on them in the world to come. But another theory is just the opposite. In reciting Yisker, we remind God who our family was, who our parents were, and are their relatives, in the hope that through their merit, our lives will be enriched for a new year to come. But this still leaves us with the question, why do we say Yisker on Passover, Shavuot, and Sukkot? Originally, as we've seen, it was only meant to recite Yom Kippur. Why the additional 3 holidays? And it's not just to get people to come to services on second day. There are several historical reasons that Yisker is offered on these 3 days. But why specifically? One explanation is that our Torah portion, the last days of these festivals, speak of gifts that were offered to God in the temple, making these days an appropriate time for offering gifts to charity and remembering our loved ones as we recite Yisker. But one last question. On Passover, Shavuot, and Sukkot, we're commanded to rejoice. It's a biblical commandment. Why come along and disrupt the joy of the festival with bringing to mind the pain and remembering the loss of our loved ones? My colleague, Rabbi Mitchell Wahlberg, offers an answer. Because that's life. No matter how much joy we have in our lives, there's always going to be some pain. The poem Henry Wadsworth Longfellow wrote, "Be still, sad heart, and cease repining. Behind the clouds is the sun still shining. Thy fate is the common fate of all. Into each life some rain must fall." Yes, into each life rain falls. And reciting Yisker at joyous moments reminds us of that. It's a lesson found in countless Jewish traditions. We celebrate the joy of freedom on Passover, but at the same time, we eat the maror. We rejoice with the bride and groom under the chuppah, but at the same time, we break the glass. We celebrate that Beth Yeshurun is finally getting a new AC system, but we who work at Beth Yeshurun suffer through no central AC in our offices. We usher in a Jewish New Year by dipping our food in honey. And why honey? Some explain that it's to remind us that the bee delivers both, the honey and the sting. And our year, unfortunately, will have both. And yet we go on with our lives. As the Israeli poet Naomi Shemer notes, life is filled with the bitter and the sweet. Over all these things, may God bless us. In the Talmud, we read the story about Rabbi Yeshua after the destruction of the Beit Hamikdash, the second temple. And following the temple's destruction, many Jewish people began to practice self-denial. They refused to eat meat or drink wine. They countered that with no altar remaining to offer sacrifices, that they offer these things, wine and meat, how could they partake of the things that have been offered upon the Mikdash, in the temple? But Rabbi Yeshua was not happy about this, and he pushed the people. He said to them, but wasn't bread offered in the temple as well? Or what about fruit? And finally, we also offered water libations in the temple. Are you also not going to eat bread or fruit and not drink water? And Rabbi Yeshua then recited words filled with deep wisdom and truth regarding celebrations and memorials like Yisker, words that have been with us ever since. To not mourn at all is impossible, but to mourn excessively is also impossible. And that's why our sages said that a person may go on with their lives, that we as Jews, despite the destruction of the temple, should go on with our people. And we may plaster our homes, the rabbis tell us, and fix our dwellings. But in doing so, the rabbis tell us, leave a small amount unplastered in memory of the destruction. Perhaps you've seen this custom before. In this act of leaving a small amount of our homes unplastered gives us the regular opportunity to remember the tragedies of the past. When it comes to memory, commemorations, and holidays, we may be tempted to let them pass by. Why dwell on a challenging past when we can point to the improvements and step forward to concentrate on our joy? In moments when we feel this way, the tradition says, wait, perhaps we need to hold a little room for recognizing loss, for recognizing failure, to remember the sacrifices and the struggles. Like a temple destruction commentator, can we find a way to leave a little of our souls unplastered? And yet the tradition is also there as a warning to be careful. We might seek to connect with memory to the point where we cannot remove ourselves from what has transpired. In moments like this, can we remind ourselves that excessive mourning ensures that nothing new is ever built and nothing ends up plastered at all. Joy, hope, and the future must exist along sadness. And that's why Yisker is rightfully recited on a festival holiday, on a joyous day such as this one. And finally, let us always remember to be like our loved ones, who often found ways to deal with the challenges of life by still finding so much joy. May we continue to live by their examples. Remembering their passing amidst the joy of Shivuot reminds us all the moments of challenge and the moments of joy that they brought into our lives. May their memories ever be for a blessing as we now recall their memories, as we recite Yisker, now for the festival holiday of Shavuot. Let us now turn in our prayer books, page 330. And hopefully all of you received the Yisker books, and remember all the names of the loved ones, all those we mark their passing today on a holiday like Shivuot.